Hi there, you're watching the IT Taster channel. I'm your instructor John, and in this video I'm going to show you step by step how to install and configure Active Directory domain services in Microsoft Windows Server 2019. Now don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please hit the subscribe button to receive alerts of new content. And I'm also around on social media too, so again, drop by and say hello. I'll leave the links below the video. So with that said, let's go on over to the server and get started. Okay, so let's begin by logging on to the server. Now this server, by the way, is a standalone server, and all I've done is install Microsoft Windows Server 2019 and a few updates, and that's pretty much it. Now before we begin installing and configuring Active Directory domain services, there are a few pre-installation checks that I want to quickly run through. Now I do have a video on the IT Taster channel that covers initial installation and configuration of Windows Server 2019 that you might want to look at, and I'll leave the link below. So now we're in Server Manager and I'm going to click Local Server. And the first thing I want to do is take a look at our network configuration. We can see at the moment the server is set to receive an IP address from DHCP, and that's something that I don't want. I want the server to have a static IP address. So I'm going to click the link and I'm going to go to our Ethernet properties, IP version 4, properties, and I'm going to use a static IP address, which in my case is going to be 192.168.1.101. I'm going to stick with a default Class C subnet mask. I'm also going to assign a default gateway at this stage, which in my case is 192.168.1.254. I'm not going to assign any DNS settings at the moment. Here I'm just going to click OK. And we'll close that down. And the next thing I want to do is give our server a meaningful name, because by default when we install Windows Server, the host name that the server is given isn't the most user-friendly to work with, and it's something that's really important to get right at this stage. We don't want to try to change our server name after we've installed important roles like Active Directory. So we'll click that and we'll click Change. And I'm going to call my server Server 1. Click OK. We'll click OK again, and of course we do need to restart the server, so we'll do a quick restart now. Okay, now that the server's restarted, I'm going to log back in again. I'm just going to review my configuration, so I'm going to click Local Server. As we can see, the server now has a host name of Server 1 and a static IP address of 192.168.1.101. So we're now ready to proceed with the installation of the Active Directory Domain Services role. To do that, we need to click Manage, click Add Roles and Features. And this starts the Add Roles and Features wizard, and this first screen basically just tells us what the wizard does and a few important reminders, like making sure the administrator account has a strong password and that we've reviewed our network settings and installed Windows security updates. So we can just click Next. We need to select role-based or feature-based installation and click Next. Now Server Manager is designed to manage multiple servers, so if we had more than one server we would simply select the appropriate server from the pool and click Next. Now I only have one server, Server 1, which is already highlighted, so I simply need to click Next. We need to select the server role. Now it is important, if you are working with multiple servers, just to make sure that you have the correct destination server selected. I'm going to select Active Directory Domain Services, which is the role I want to install. We need to click Add Features because there are some additional features that we need to include, and click Next. Now on the Select Features screen, we can stick with the defaults, which include Group Policy Management, and click Next. This screen just gives us some more information about what Active Directory Domain Services is and what it does. Now I do have some videos on the ittaster channel that give a little bit more of an in-depth explanation, and I'll pop the links below in the description. Now there are also some important things to note. It tells us that to help ensure that users can still log on in the event of a server outage, install a minimum of 2 domain controllers for a domain. And we're also reminded that Active Directory Domain Services requires a DNS server to be installed on the network, and this means a Microsoft DNS server. And if we don't have one, we'll be prompted to install the DNS role onto this machine. And finally, we're given some additional information about Azure Active Directory, Microsoft's cloud technology. We need to confirm our installation selections. Now, some roles and features do require a restart of the server, and we can actually tick this box to give Windows Server permission to restart the server automatically. And we can also export our configuration settings. We can now click Install to proceed. The installation of the binary files is now taking place. Now this is going to take a little while, so I'm going to speed things up a little and join you when this is complete. The installation of the binary files is now complete, and the wizard tells us that additional steps are required to make this machine a domain controller. We need to promote this server to a domain controller. I now need to select the deployment operation. Now this is a brand new installation of Active Directory Domain Services, so I need to click Add New Forest. I now need to specify the root domain name. This is the very first domain that is created in our brand new Active Directory forest, and this needs to be entered in the form of a fully qualified domain name. Now, one suggested method is to use a subdomain of a publicly registered domain name. So for example, in my case, I might use something like training.ittaster.com. ittaster.com is my publicly registered domain name. Now, alternatively, you will see people using what are known as local or dummy domain names. For example, ittaster.local. Now this kind of domain name is fine for a lab where you're testing, but it's not a good thing to use this type of domain name in a production environment because you can encounter problems with things like certificates. Now I have a video that explains this in greater detail, and again I will leave the link below. So I'm going to follow the suggested method of using a subdomain of my publicly registered domain name, which is training.ittaster.com, and click Next. I need to select the functional level of the forest and root domain. Now, functional levels determine the characteristics and functionality of Active Directory Domain Services and the features available in the forest and domains. And also, very importantly, it also affects the server operating systems that can be run on domain controllers. Now, the forest functional level sets the minimum level of Active Directory Domain Services functionality for all domains and all domain controllers within those domains. I'll say that again, it sets the minimum level of Active Directory Domain Services functionality for all domains and all domain controllers within those domains, whereas the domain functional level sets the ADDS functionality level for all domain controllers within the domain. So you cannot set the domain functional level below the forest functional level, but you can set it higher. Now in Windows Server 2019, The highest forest and domain functional level that you can set your server to is in fact Windows Server 2016 because there have been no significant changes. Now it's also suggested good practice to set your forest and domain functional levels to the highest value that your environment can support. But you do need to be really careful when changing things like forest and domain functional levels. Do your homework first, make sure that your environment does properly support it because it can cause serious problems if you set this incorrectly. Now, as my server is running Windows Server 2019 operating system, it's the only server that I have in my test lab also, so I'm going to leave the forest and domain functional levels set at the highest value of Windows Server 2016. And notice DNS is ticked by default because it's an essential ADDS service. And also the global catalog option because our very first domain controller must be a global catalog server. And finally, we need to specify a directory services restore mode password should we have problems and need to carry out a directory services mode restore. And click Next. Now at the top of the screen you can see we have an error that says a delegation for this DNS server cannot be created, and this is because it's a brand new installation of Active Directory and we don't have a dynamic Microsoft DNS server at this stage. So we can just click Next. We need to verify the NetBIOS domain name assigned to the domain. Now, NetBIOS is a protocol that isn't used that much these days. In fact, it's a pre-Windows Server 2000 technology. The NetBIOS domain name has defaulted to training, so I'm going to leave the NetBIOS domain name set at that and click Next. I'm going to keep the default locations for the ADDS database, log files and sysvol folders and click Next. We have the opportunity to review our selections and click Next. Windows Server needs to run some prerequisites checks before Active Directory domain services can be installed on this server, and this can take just a few moments to run through. We can see that all prerequisite checks have passed successfully. Now we do have a few warnings below, but this is to be expected with a brand new installation of Active Directory domain services. So we just need to click Install to begin the installation. Now Active Directory domain services is now being installed, and this is going to take a little while, so I'm going to leave it running and we'll return to the video when it's completed. The installation has completed and I'm now ready to log into the server. But notice I'm now logging into the training domain using the domain administrator account. I'm back in Server Manager and we can see that we have an Active Directory domain services tile, and we also now have a DNS tile as well. And if we go back to local server, we can see that server 1 now belongs to the training.ittaster.com domain. And if we go to tools, we can see that we have some useful tools like Active Directory users and computers, which we'll look at in other videos. Well, that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful. Please give the video a like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to the IT Taster channel if you haven't already to receive alerts of new content. And also, I'll leave the links to the other videos I mentioned in the description below. I'm also around on social media too, and again, if you have time, drop by and say hello. Again, I'll leave the links in the description for that. So as always, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.